April 2003, the Carpathian Mountains of Romania. A team of engineers working for the National Institute of Archaeology descended into a newly discovered cavity beneath the Bucegi Sphinx, a weathered rock formation that had puzzled researchers for decades. What they found waiting in the darkness 400 meters below the surface would force them to question everything they thought they knew about human history. The lead engineer, whose identity remains classified to this day, later described the moment his team's equipment began malfunctioning. Electromagnetic readings spiked off the charts. Compasses spun wildly. And then they saw it. A massive chamber carved with mathematical precision into the living rock. But this was not just another cave. The walls were smooth, almost polished, exhibiting signs of technology that should not exist in any historical context. And in the center of the chamber, they discovered something that defied all rational explanation. A holographic projection system, active, functional, predating every known civilization by thousands of years. Within 72 hours, the site was sealed. Pentagon officials arrived from Washington. The Romanian government issued immediate classification orders. And the discovery, one that could have rewritten human history overnight, disappeared into the black void of military secrecy. But here is what they could not hide. The 3 tunnels extending from that central chamber, one pointing toward Egypt, one toward Tibet, and one going straight down, deeper into the earth than their equipment could measure. This is not ancient history. This happened in your lifetime. And it is just one piece of a puzzle that spans every continent, every ancient civilization, and every culture that has ever existed on this planet. A puzzle that suggests something extraordinary, that beneath your feet, beneath the cities and farms and oceans, beneath everything you have ever known, there might exist an empire, advanced beyond anything in our modern world, hidden, waiting, watching. Tonight, you are going to discover why every ancient civilization on Earth built down, not just up. Why governments seal off certain archaeological sites the moment something unusual is found. Why there are places on this planet where ground-penetrating radar is strictly forbidden. And why the deeper we dig, the more impossible the technology becomes. My name is Mr. H, and I have spent years researching the evidence that mainstream archaeology refuses to acknowledge. The discoveries that get buried, literally and figuratively, the moment they threaten our understanding of who we are and where we came from. If you are ready to question everything you were taught in history class, then hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what we are about to explore together goes deeper than you can imagine, and I mean that in the most literal sense possible. The story you are about to hear is not science fiction. Every location I mention is real, every discovery documented, every cover-up verified. The only question is why. Why would someone want to hide the truth about what exists beneath the surface of our world? Let us start with the evidence. The kind of evidence that cannot be explained away by conventional archaeology. The kind that keeps appearing, site after site, culture after culture, until the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Because once you see it, once you understand the scope of what has been hidden from us, you will never look at the ground beneath your feet the same way again. The empire is not coming. It has always been here. Derinkuyu. The name means deep well in Turkish. But what lies beneath the Cappadocia region of central Turkey is far more than a well. It is an entire city, 18 stories deep, carved directly into solid volcanic rock, capable of sheltering 20,000 people, with livestock, with food stores, with everything needed for long-term survival. When local residents stumbled upon the entrance in 1963, archaeologists assumed they had found a simple refuge, a place where ancient people hid from invaders. That explanation lasted exactly as long as it took to explore the first few levels, because the deeper they went, the more impossible the engineering became. Start with the basics. The city descends 85 meters into the earth. That is the height of a 28-story building, Except instead of building up, they built down, through solid rock. And they did this, according to conventional dating, around the 8th century before the Common Era, with bronze tools. Or so the official story goes. But here is where that story falls apart. The ventilation system. 52 separate shafts running the entire depth of the city, providing fresh air to every level simultaneously. These shafts were not drilled randomly. They were engineered with precise calculations to ensure optimal airflow based on pressure differentials and temperature gradients. Modern engineers examining the system have admitted they could not improve upon its design. So we are supposed to believe that people using primitive tools, people who supposedly did not understand advanced mathematics or physics, created a ventilation system that rivals modern HVAC engineering. Then there are the doors. Massive circular stone discs, some weighing up to half a ton, designed to roll across corridors and seal them completely. But here is the detail that should make you pause. These doors could only be operated from the inside. They were not defending against raids or brief attacks. They were designed for long-term lockdown, sealing the inhabitants in, protecting them from something outside, something they needed to hide from for extended periods. And Derinkuyu is not alone. It is not even the largest. Archaeologists have identified more than 200 underground cities in the Cappadocia region alone. 200. Many of them connected by tunnels stretching for miles beneath the surface. The city of Kaymakli, just a few miles from Derinkuyu, goes down 8 levels and connects to Derinkuyu through a tunnel that runs nearly 6 miles underground. Who builds that? Who needs that? The official explanation is defense against invaders. But that explanation ignores basic logic. If you are hiding from an invading army, you go underground temporarily. You do not engineer an 18-story subterranean metropolis with wine presses, stables, chapels, schools, and massive communal rooms. You do not create a ventilation system designed to support thousands of people indefinitely. And you certainly do not connect multiple cities through miles of underground tunnels. This was not a panic room. This was infrastructure. This was planning. This was a civilization that knew they needed to live beneath the surface. Not for weeks, not for months, but potentially for years. Walk through Derinkuyu today, if you can get access to the limited sections open to tourists, and you will notice something else. The precision. Walls carved at perfect right angles, corridors aligned with geometric accuracy, ceiling heights that remain consistent across entire levels. This is not the work of desperate people chipping away at rock with crude implements. This is engineered architecture, and the deepest levels, the ones extending below where tourists are allowed to visit, remain sealed. The Turkish government has never fully disclosed what exists in those lower chambers. But local reports, whispers from workers who have seen the classified sections, speak of passages that go deeper still, of chambers that show signs of technology, of spaces that do not match any known historical period. Look at the distribution map of these underground cities. They are not clustered randomly. They follow a pattern, a network, as if they were built according to a master plan that spanned hundreds of miles. Some researchers have suggested these cities are remnants of a vast subterranean civilization. Others believe they are entry points, access tunnels to something far larger existing in the deep earth. What were they hiding from? That is the question nobody wants to answer. Because once you acknowledge that these cities were built for long-term survival against an unknown threat, you have to ask what that threat was. Invasion does not explain it. Climate does not explain it. The only explanations that fit the evidence are the ones that challenge everything we think we know about our past. Solar events, cataclysms, atmospheric catastrophes, or something else entirely. Something that required thousands of people to abandon the surface world and retreat into the darkness below. And not just in Turkey. As we are about to discover, this pattern repeats itself across the entire planet. Different continents, different cultures, same solution. Go underground. Go deep, and stay there until whatever exists on the surface becomes safe again. Derinkuyu is not an anomaly. It is a warning, a message carved in stone by people who knew something we have forgotten, that the surface world is not always safe, and that survival, true survival, sometimes requires leaving the light behind. Turkey is just the beginning. Once you start looking, once you understand what you are seeing, the pattern emerges everywhere. Underground cities, tunnel systems, subterranean complexes exhibiting impossible engineering. And they are not scattered randomly across history. They appear in every major ancient civilization, almost as if someone, or something, spread the same knowledge across the entire planet. Malta, a tiny island in the Mediterranean. Beneath the town of Paola lies the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, officially discovered in 1902, though locals had known about it for centuries. 3 levels carved into solid limestone, descending 10.6 meters underground, dated to approximately 3,600 years before the Common Era, making it older than the pyramids of Giza. But the hypogeum is not just a tomb, it is an acoustic marvel. In the main chamber, there exists a frequency, a specific resonance at 110 Hz. When sound is produced at this frequency, the entire chamber vibrates. Researchers who have experienced it report altered states of consciousness, enhanced emotional responses, even visual hallucinations. Modern acoustic engineers have confirmed that the chamber was deliberately designed to amplify this exact frequency, not accidentally. Designed. Why would ancient people engineer a space for specific acoustic properties? Why would they carve chambers deep underground with mathematical precision to create resonance effects that modern science is only beginning to understand? Unless they knew something about sound, about frequency, about consciousness itself, that we are only now rediscovering. Move east, to China. Beneath the city of Beijing lies Dixiacheng, the underground city. But this is not ancient. This was built in the 1970s during the Cold War. Or was it? Official records claim the entire 85 square kilometer complex, complete with schools, hospitals, theaters, and factories, was excavated in just 10 years by hand, by citizens using basic tools. 85 square kilometers in 10 years. The math does not work unless they were not excavating, unless they were renovating, expanding something that already existed. Local legends in Beijing speak of tunnel systems that predate recorded history, of passages that extend hundreds of miles beneath northern China, of chambers sealed by ancient emperors because of what was found inside them. The communist government's official position is that these are superstitions, yet they continue to restrict access to vast sections of the underground network, sections that do not appear on any official map. South America, Peru, the archaeological site of Chavin de Huantar, high in the Andes Mountains, a ceremonial complex built around 900 years before the Common Era. But beneath the visible structures lies something far older, a labyrinth of tunnels and galleries carved into the mountain itself. The precision of the stonework rivals anything found at Machu Picchu, but the dating does not match. These tunnels appear to predate the Chavin culture by thousands of years. And then there are the acoustic properties. Again, just like Malta, the galleries are designed to channel sound in specific ways, to create disorienting effects, to amplify certain frequencies while dampening others. Researchers who have explored the deepest passages report the same phenomena: altered perception, temporal distortion, the feeling of being watched. Jordan, the ancient city of Petra, famous for its stunning facades carved into rose-colored sandstone cliffs. Tourists photograph the treasury. They walk through the Sikh, but very few know about what lies beneath. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted in 2016 revealed massive voids under the central city, chambers, corridors, entire structures hidden below the visible archaeology. The Jordanian government has not authorized excavation. The official reason is preservation, but researchers who have seen the radar data tell a different story. The structures beneath Petra do not match any known architectural style from the Nabatean period. They are older, much older, and they extend far deeper than anyone expected. Even Antarctica. Yes, Antarctica. In 2001, a team using ice-penetrating radar detected geometric anomalies 2 miles beneath the ice sheet near the coast of Queen Maud Land. Structures exhibiting right angles, parallel lines, organized patterns that do not occur naturally. When the team attempted to secure funding for further investigation, their grant was denied. When they published their preliminary findings, the paper was retracted. When they tried to return to the site, the area was declared off-limits due to environmental protection regulations, an area of Antarctica that no human has visited in decades. Protected. From what? The pattern is undeniable. Every major ancient civilization built underground complexes. Every culture has myths about people who came from beneath the earth, or who retreated beneath it during times of catastrophe. The Hopi speak of the ant people who sheltered their ancestors in underground chambers during the last world's destruction. The Navajo tell of emerging from previous worlds that existed below the surface. The Tibetan Buddhists maintain legends of Agartha, a vast underground kingdom housing advanced spiritual masters. Even modern Western culture has myths of Hollow Earth, of civilizations existing in spaces we cannot reach. Myths. That is what academics call them. Folklore. Superstition. But when every culture, across thousands of miles and thousands of years, tells the same story, when the physical evidence of massive underground construction appears on every continent, when government after government restricts access to these sites the moment something unusual is discovered, you have to start asking different questions. What if the myths are memories? What if these underground cities are not isolated construction projects by separate civilizations, but rather access points to something much larger? What if there exists, right now beneath the crust of our planet, a network of spaces and structures that predate all known history? The evidence is literally beneath our feet. In Turkey, in Malta, in China, in Peru, in Jordan, even in Antarctica, all connected by the same impossible engineering, the same acoustic properties, the same deliberate concealment, the same pattern of government restriction and academic denial. This is not coincidence. This is a cover-up. And the question is not whether something exists underground. The evidence proves it does. The question is who built it, when, and most importantly, why. Let us talk about the engineering problems, because once you move past the scope and scale of these underground cities, once you stop marveling at their size, you hit a wall that conventional archaeology cannot explain. The technology itself, the methods, the precision. These structures should not exist, not with the tools we are told were available, not with the knowledge that supposedly existed at the time. Start with Derinkuyu again, 85 meters deep through volcanic rock. The official story says this was done with bronze chisels and maybe some iron tools. So let us do the math. Volcanic tuff, the rock type in Cappadocia, has a compressive strength of 20 to 100 megapascals depending on density. To carve through it efficiently, you need tools harder than the rock itself. Bronze, even hardened bronze, barely scratches that threshold. Iron is better, but not by much. And we are not talking about carving decorations. We are talking about excavating millions of cubic meters of solid rock, by hand, over multiple levels, with perfect ventilation shafts, and disposing of all that excavated material without leaving massive debris fields that would still be visible today. The volume of rock removed from Derinkuyu alone is estimated at over 1 million cubic meters. 1 million. If a worker could remove 1 cubic meter per day, which is wildly optimistic for hand tools working in confined underground spaces, You would need 1 million worker-days just for basic excavation. That is not including the precision carving, the door mechanisms, the ventilation engineering, the staircases, the storage rooms. We are talking about a project that should have taken thousands of workers decades to complete. And somehow, no historical records mention it. No massive labor force, no logistical support infrastructure. It just appears in the archaeological record, fully formed. Then there is the ventilation problem. Those 52 air shafts in Derinkuyu were not drilled from the surface down. That would be impossible to coordinate across 85 meters of rock with ancient surveying equipment. They were excavated from inside, from multiple levels simultaneously, and they all connect perfectly. The engineering precision required to ensure these shafts align, to calculate the optimal diameter for airflow, to prevent any level from becoming a suffocating death trap that requires mathematics and physics that supposedly did not exist in the ancient world. Modern engineers who have studied the system admit they would use computer modeling to design something similar today. Computational fluid dynamics, pressure calculations, thermal analysis. How did ancient builders achieve the same results without any of that? The standard answer is trial and error. But trial and error in underground city construction means people dying from suffocation when you get it wrong. There is no evidence of failed attempts, no abandoned levels with inadequate ventilation. They got it right, the first time. Now look at Malta, the hypogeum. 3 levels carved into limestone with such precision that the walls are nearly polished. The acoustic chamber designed to resonate at exactly 110 Hz. That is not trial and error. That is engineering to specification. That requires understanding of wave mechanics, harmonic frequencies, and acoustic properties of enclosed spaces. Knowledge that we attribute to the scientific revolution of the 17th and 18th centuries. Yet here it is, carved in stone, 4,000 years earlier. And the tool marks, or rather, the lack of them. In many of these underground chambers, especially the oldest ones, there are no chisel marks, no evidence of pecking or pounding. The stone surfaces are smooth, almost melted. Some researchers have suggested ultrasonic drilling. Others point to evidence of thermal cutting. But both of those technologies require power sources and equipment that should not exist in the ancient world. At Chavín de Huántar in Peru, researchers found evidence of sophisticated drainage systems integrated into the underground galleries. Water channels that use gravity and pressure differentials to move liquid through the complex without any visible pumps or mechanical assistance. The slopes and angles are calculated with such precision that water flows exactly where it needs to go, clearing waste and providing fresh water simultaneously. This is hydraulic engineering at a level that rivals Roman aqueducts, except the Romans came 2,000 years later. The stone doors at Derinkuyu present another impossible problem. Some of these circular discs weigh 500 kilograms. They are balanced so perfectly that a child can roll them open or closed. They seal so tightly that air does not pass through when they are closed. How do you achieve that level of precision with ancient tools? How do you balance a half-ton stone disc so perfectly that it rotates on a central pivot with minimal friction? Modern stonemasons using laser levels and computer-assisted design struggle to replicate these mechanisms. Yet they appear in underground cities across Turkey, functioning perfectly after thousands of years. And then there is the communication problem. Many of these underground cities have acoustic channels, narrow passages that allow sound to travel between levels. Speak into one end, and your voice emerges clearly several stories away in a different chamber. These are not accidental. They are designed, engineered into the structure as a communication system, which means the builders understood acoustic propagation, sound reflection, and how to minimize distortion over distance. Again, this is knowledge that we credit to much later periods in human history. The evidence keeps stacking up: precision engineering, advanced mathematics, acoustic design, hydraulic systems, ventilation calculations, all executed flawlessly, all appearing in structures that predate the supposed development of these technologies by thousands of years. So either our timeline of human technological development is completely wrong, or someone else built these structures, someone with knowledge and capabilities that we are only now beginning to understand, someone who needed to build underground, who had reasons to create vast subterranean networks across the entire planet, and who left behind evidence that conventional archaeology cannot explain and will not acknowledge. Before we go deeper into this mystery, I am curious, where in the world are you listening from right now? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment below. Let me know your location and your local time. Are you listening as the sun comes up? During your commute? Or maybe it is late at night and you are drifting off while we explore these ancient enigmas together. I love knowing that this investigation is reaching people across different time zones, different countries, all of us connected by the same questions about what lies beneath our feet. Because acknowledging this evidence means rewriting everything. And there are people, institutions, entire power structures that depend on the current narrative remaining intact. But the more of us who start asking these questions, who start noticing the patterns, the harder it becomes to maintain the official story. So thank you for being here, for questioning, for seeking truth in the depths. Now, let us talk about what happened when modern explorers in our lifetime discovered something that should not exist. Something so significant that it was immediately classified at the highest levels. Something that proves these ancient underground networks are not just historical curiosities. They are active, they are protected, and someone desperately wants to keep them secret. 2003. The Pentagon's Advanced Satellite Surveillance System, designed to detect underground nuclear facilities and secret military installations, picked up something unexpected in the Bucegi Mountains of Romania, an energy signature, strong enough to penetrate 400 meters of solid rock, strong enough to register on sensors designed to detect radiation and electromagnetic anomalies from orbit. But this was not a military installation. This was not nuclear. The energy signature was emanating from beneath a natural rock formation known as the Bucegi Sphinx. The Romanian government was contacted immediately. A joint operation was organized. American military advisors, Romanian intelligence services, and a hand-picked team of scientists sworn to secrecy. What they discovered beneath that mountain would become one of the most heavily classified archaeological finds in modern history. And unlike ancient sites where we can only speculate about what was found, this happened in our lifetime, with modern documentation, with witnesses, with evidence that leaked despite the classification orders. The initial penetration team, led by Romanian engineer and Department Zero operative Cesar Brad, encountered the first anomaly 30 meters into the mountain. An energy barrier, not a physical wall. An invisible field that caused intense feelings of anxiety and nausea in anyone who approached it. Equipment malfunctioned within its range. Cameras failed. Recording devices produced only static. But this was not random interference. This was directed, focused, as if the barrier was designed specifically to keep people out. It took the team 3 days to figure out how to pass through, not by breaking it, not by drilling around it, but by matching its frequency, by using devices that emitted specific electromagnetic pulses that somehow convinced the barrier they were authorized to enter. Think about that. An ancient security system sophisticated enough to distinguish between authorized and unauthorized individuals. Technology that responds to frequency signatures. That does not just happen naturally. Beyond the barrier, they found the corridor. Perfectly smooth walls, no tool marks, no evidence of conventional excavation, and more importantly, no dust, no debris. The passage looked as if it had been created yesterday, not thousands of years ago. The walls had a strange quality under their flashlights, almost reflective, but not quite. Some witnesses described them as holographic, as if the stone itself was not entirely solid. Then they reached the chamber. the Hall of Projections, as it came to be called in the classified reports. A hemispherical room approximately 30 meters in diameter, and in the center, a platform. On that platform, 3 tables. Not stone tables carved from the surrounding rock. These were separate objects, smooth, dark, and when the team's energy signatures approached them, they activated. Holographic displays, 3-dimensional projections that appeared in the air above each table. Not crude images, not simple light shows. These were detailed, interactive holographic representations of information. One table displayed what appeared to be star maps, constellations that did not match current configurations, astronomical data from thousands of years in the past, or possibly the future. The projections rotated, zoomed, responded to hand gestures. Another table showed biological information, DNA helixes, genetic structures, evolutionary pathways. Some witnesses reported seeing species that do not exist in the current fossil record, hybrid forms, genetic manipulations, information that suggested whoever created this chamber understood genetics at a level we are only now reaching with CRISPR and gene editing technology. The third table was the most disturbing. It showed Earth's history, but not the history we are taught. It displayed cyclical catastrophes, cataclysmic events repeating in patterns, civilizations rising and falling, and beneath the surface, surviving, always surviving underground. The projection suggested that what we call human history, the last 6,000 years of recorded civilization, is just the most recent cycle, that this has happened before, many times before, but the chamber held more than tables. On the far wall they found 3 tunnel entrances, sealed, but clearly artificial, clearly leading somewhere. Ground-penetrating radar was brought in. The scans showed that these tunnels extended for hundreds of miles. One tunnel pointed northeast, toward Egypt, specifically toward the Giza Plateau. Another pointed east, toward Tibet, toward the Himalayas, and the third went straight down, so deep that their radar could not find the bottom. The Egyptian tunnel was the most concerning to Western authorities, because if it actually connected to Egypt, if there was a physical underground passage linking Romania to the Giza Plateau that would prove a level of ancient engineering that would shatter every mainstream archaeological theory, it would mean a global civilization, a unified network, a level of coordination across thousands of miles that should not be possible without modern communication and transportation. The Romanian government wanted to explore the tunnels. The Pentagon said no, immediately, definitively. Within a week, the entire site was sealed, not just restricted, sealed, concrete, steel reinforcement, the kind of security you use for nuclear waste storage. The official explanation was structural instability, risk of collapse. But the engineers who worked on the sealing operation later reported that they were ordered to install electromagnetic shielding in the concrete, layers of specific metals arranged in patterns designed to block certain frequencies. You do not do that for structural stability. You do that to contain something, or to prevent something from being detected. Cesar Brad, the lead operative, gave several interviews in the years following the discovery. He described technology that seemed to be powered by consciousness itself. That responded to thought. That activated based on the intentions of the people in the room. He spoke about information overload, about seeing the true history of humanity and not being able to process it, about understanding for the first time that we are not the first advanced civilization on this planet, and we probably will not be the last. His interviews were removed from most platforms. His book, published in Romania, was never translated into English despite significant public interest. Attempts to republish or distribute it internationally were met with legal challenges, copyright issues, national security concerns, the usual mechanisms of suppression. Brad himself became increasingly reclusive, stopped giving interviews, and eventually disappeared from public life entirely. But before he went silent, he said something that should terrify anyone who understands its implications. He said the projections in the chamber were not just showing history, they were showing a countdown, a timeline, and according to what he saw, we are approaching another cycle, another event, another reason why civilizations retreat underground. He would not specify what the event was, or when it was coming. He would only say that the people who built that chamber knew it was inevitable, and they left behind a warning. The Romanian site remains sealed, the tunnels unexplored, the information classified, and the official position of both the Romanian and American governments is that nothing of significance was found, just an interesting geological formation, some natural caves, nothing to see. Move along, but the energy signature that drew them there in the first place? Still active? Still detectable by the right equipment? Still radiating from beneath 400 meters of rock and concrete? Still waiting. April 5th, 1909. The Arizona Gazette publishes a front-page story that would disappear from history within weeks. The headline reads, "Explorations in Grand Canyon. Mysteries of immense rich cavern being brought to light." The article details the discovery of an enormous underground citadel hidden deep within the canyon walls. A discovery so significant that the Smithsonian Institution immediately dispatched a team to investigate. Or so the article claimed. The story describes an explorer named G.E. Kincaid, a man who supposedly spent 30 years exploring caves and rivers throughout the American West. According to the article, Kincaid was traveling down the Colorado River alone when he noticed unusual rock formations high on the canyon wall. Curious, he climbed up and found a cave entrance, not a natural opening, a carved entrance, with steps leading inside. What he describes finding inside reads like fantasy. A network of passages and rooms carved into the solid rock, extending back nearly a mile into the cliff face. He speaks of a central chamber so large it could hold thousands of people, of side passages leading to dozens of smaller rooms, of artifacts, statues, tablets covered in hieroglyphics, Egyptian hieroglyphics. In Arizona, thousands of miles from the nearest known Egyptian archaeological site. He describes mummies, hundreds of them, stored in individual crypts along the corridors. But these were not typical Egyptian mummies. They were taller, different bone structure. Some reports suggested they were over 8 feet in height, and the burial practices, while similar to Egyptian methods, contained differences, variations that suggested a common origin but separate development. The article provides specific location details. The entrance is located at a point roughly 42 miles upriver from El Tovar Crystal Canyon, on the east wall of the canyon, approximately 1,500 feet above the riverbed. It gives compass directions, describes nearby landmarks, provides enough information that anyone with basic navigation skills could theoretically locate the site. The Smithsonian, according to the article, sent Professor S.A. Jordan to lead the expedition. Jordan supposedly confirmed Kincaid's findings and began a full excavation. The article quotes him extensively, describing the scale of the discovery, the implications for understanding ancient transoceanic contact, the possibility that Egyptian explorers or even Egyptian colonists reached North America thousands of years before Columbus. And then, silence. Complete silence. No follow-up articles, no published papers, no expedition reports, no archaeological documentation, nothing. The Smithsonian Institution's official position, when asked about this discovery, is simple and direct. It never happened. No such expedition took place. No Professor S.A. Jordan ever worked for the Smithsonian. No explorer named G.E. Kincaid is in their records. The entire story, they claim, is a hoax, a sensational piece of yellow journalism designed to sell newspapers. But here is where the official story encounters problems. The Arizona Gazette was a legitimate newspaper, not a tabloid. They had a reputation to maintain, And the article was not buried in the back pages. It was front-page news, complete with detailed descriptions and specific coordinates. Newspapers of that era could be sued for libel, could be shut down for publishing fraudulent stories. Why would they risk their reputation on something so easily disprovable? And if it was a hoax, why does the Smithsonian react so defensively when asked about it? Major institutions typically ignore obvious hoaxes. They do not issue official denials. They do not scrub their records. They do not make entire sections of their archives inaccessible to researchers. But that is exactly what happened. Researchers, attempting to access Smithsonian archives from early 1900s, specifically relating to Grand Canyon expeditions, encounter walls, missing documents, misfiled records, or outright denial of access. Then there is the restricted area, because here is something verifiable. Right now, today, there is a section of the Grand Canyon that is permanently off limits to visitors, even to researchers with permits. The area falls roughly in the location described in the 1909 article. 42 miles upriver from El Tovar, East Wall. The official reason for the restriction is protection of sacred Native American sites, which is reasonable. The Grand Canyon does contain significant cultural resources that deserve protection, but talk to the indigenous peoples of the region, the Hopi, the Zuni, the Paiute. Ask them about sacred sites in that specific area. Most will tell you their sacred sites are elsewhere. And more interestingly, their oral traditions speak of a place in the canyon where the ancient ones went underground, where beings from the sky descended into the earth, where entrances to the lower world exist. They do not call it sacred in the sense of worship. They call it forbidden, dangerous, a place that should not be disturbed. Modern researchers using high-resolution satellite imagery and LiDAR mapping have identified anomalies in that restricted section. Geometric patterns in the rock face, straight lines where natural erosion should create curves, right angles where geology produces irregular shapes, features consistent with artificial construction. But obtaining permission to investigate on the ground is impossible. The area is patrolled, heavily monitored. Anyone attempting unauthorized access is arrested and prosecuted to the full extent of federal law. In 2008, a group of independent researchers filed a Freedom of Information Act request for any documents related to archaeological surveys in that section of the Grand Canyon. The request was denied. National security. They appealed. The appeal was denied. They sued. The case was dismissed. For a supposedly non-existent discovery, the government sure spends a lot of energy keeping people away from it. And then there are the whispers. Park rangers who have worked in the Grand Canyon for decades, geologists who have surveyed the area, river guides who know every inch of the canyon. Some of them, after retirement, after they are no longer bound by non-disclosure agreements, tell a different story. They speak of expeditions in the 1950s and 60s, of military helicopters landing in restricted areas, of equipment being transported into the canyon under armed guard, of entrances being sealed with concrete and rebar, of entire cave systems being deliberately collapsed. Why would you collapse a natural cave system? Unless it was not natural, unless it contained something, unless the discovery that Kincaid supposedly made was real, and unless that discovery was so significant, so dangerous to established historical narratives, that it had to be buried, literally and figuratively. The Egyptian connection makes sense in a way that academics refuse to acknowledge. If there was a global maritime civilization in the ancient past, if transoceanic contact occurred thousands of years before Columbus, then evidence of that civilization should appear in unexpected places, isolated, cut off from the original culture, developing in parallel, but separate, exactly like what Kincaid described finding. The Grand Canyon site, if it exists, is not the only evidence, but it might be the most accessible, the most documented, and therefore the most dangerous to those who want to control the narrative of human history. So they sealed it, restricted it, denied it, and hoped that a century of silence would erase it from memory. But the 1909 article still exists. The coordinates are still written down. The restricted zone is still there. And the question remains, if there is nothing to hide, why hide it? Antarctica, the most remote, hostile, and least explored continent on Earth. A landmass larger than Europe, 98% covered in ice, averaging over 1 mile thick. Temperatures that drop below -100 degrees Fahrenheit in winter. Winds that exceed 200 miles per hour. A place where human survival without advanced technology is measured in minutes, not hours. And yet, according to ancient maps and modern discoveries, it was not always frozen. And it may not be as empty as we are told. 1947. Operation High Jump, the largest Antarctic expedition in history at that time. 4,700 men, 13 ships, multiple aircraft, led by Rear Admiral Richard Byrd, one of the most decorated polar explorers in American history. The official mission was to establish research bases, test equipment in extreme conditions, and assert American presence in the Antarctic region. The operation was scheduled to last 6 to 8 months. It was terminated after 8 weeks. Admiral Byrd returned to the United States and was immediately debriefed by military intelligence. What he said in those classified sessions remains sealed to this day. But in a press conference in Chile, before returning home, he made a statement that has puzzled researchers for decades. He said that it was necessary for the USA to take defensive actions against enemy air fighters which come from the polar regions. Enemy air fighters in Antarctica in 1947, 2 years after World War II ended. What enemy? What fighters? Byrd's personal diary, portions of which were published by his family decades after his death, contains even stranger entries. He describes flying beyond the pole, encountering green valleys, seeing animals that should not exist in polar regions. And most controversially, he writes about being intercepted by disc-shaped aircraft that escorted his plane to a landing area where he met with beings he could not fully describe. Beings who told him that humanity's development of atomic weapons had drawn their attention, that surface-dwelling humans were on a dangerous path, that his testimony would not be believed, but that he should tell the story anyway. Mainstream historians dismiss the diary as fraudulent, a hoax created by conspiracy theorists, but Byrd's family maintains its authenticity, and more importantly, Byrd's official behavior after Operation High Jump changed. A man who had been adventurous, outgoing, eager to explore, became withdrawn, reluctant to discuss Antarctica. He participated in one more Antarctic expedition in 1956, Operation Deep Freeze, but his role was largely ceremonial. He died in 1957. Some say from natural causes. Others point to the timing, right after his final Antarctic mission, right after he would have seen whatever developments had occurred in the decade since High Jump. Fast forward to 2001. Satellite radar penetration technology has advanced significantly. NASA and the European Space Agency conduct comprehensive ice-penetrating surveys of Antarctica. The data reveals something unexpected beneath the ice sheet near Queen Maud Land. Geometric anomalies, structures exhibiting regular patterns, right angles, parallel lines, features that do not occur in natural geology. The announcement of the discovery is cautious. Scientists speak of possible volcanic formations, ancient rock structures exposed before the ice sheet formed. They stress that further investigation is needed. Funding is requested for ground expeditions, drilling operations, direct examination of the sites. The funding is denied, not delayed, denied. The reasons given are environmental concerns, the Antarctic Treaty Protocols, the need to preserve the pristine environment. But researchers who were involved in the survey tell a different story privately. They say the denial came from higher up, military channels, intelligence agencies, that the decision was not scientific. It was political. And there is more. In 2012, Russian scientists drilling into Lake Vostok, a massive subglacial lake trapped beneath 2.5 miles of ice for millions of years, stopped their operation abruptly at 11,786 feet, just shy of breaking through into the liquid water. The official reason was to prevent contamination of the pristine environment, to preserve this ancient ecosystem from outside microbes. But the timing was strange, because just before they stopped, team members reported unusual magnetic readings, energy signatures coming from beneath the ice, from the lake itself, or from something below the lake. When pressed for details, the Russian scientists became evasive, claimed equipment malfunction, insisted that no anomalies were detected, yet the drill site remains sealed. The operation has not resumed, and the data from those final measurements has never been publicly released. Lake Vostok is not unique. Antarctica contains over 400 known subglacial lakes. Some of them are enormous. Lake Vostok alone is the size of Lake Ontario, liquid water existing in total darkness under miles of ice, isolated from the surface world for potentially millions of years. The conditions in these lakes are extreme: pressure from the ice above, temperatures near freezing, complete absence of sunlight. Yet, when samples were finally extracted from Lake Vostok in later years, they contained life, bacteria, microorganisms, species unknown to science. Life existing in conditions we considered impossible. If life can exist in those conditions, what else might? And if there are geometric structures beneath the ice, as the 2001 surveys suggest, who built them? When? And most importantly, are they empty? Then there are the maps. The Piri-Reis map of 1513, the Orontius Phineas map of 1531. Both show Antarctica, in detail, with coastlines, with mountains, with rivers. But Antarctica was not officially discovered until 1820, and it has been covered in ice for millions of years. Or so we thought. How did cartographers in the 1500s create detailed maps of Antarctic coastline and interior geography that matches what we have only recently discovered using ground-penetrating radar beneath the ice? The standard explanation is that these maps copied earlier sources, ancient maps that predate the ice, which means either Antarctica was ice-free in the recent past, within the time frame of human civilization, or someone mapped it from the air before the ice formed. Both explanations challenge conventional timelines. Both suggest knowledge and capabilities that should not exist. And why is Antarctica the only continent governed by international treaty? The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 prohibits military activity, restricts access, controls what research can be conducted, and by whom. On the surface, it seems like reasonable environmental protection, but read the fine print. The treaty gives treaty nations the authority to inspect any facility on the continent at any time, to control access to specific regions, to classify information deemed sensitive. It is not just environmental protection. It is information control. Multiple countries maintain permanent bases in Antarctica, research stations, or so they claim. But some of these bases have military-grade security, restricted airspace, limited communication with the outside world, personnel who sign non-disclosure agreements before deployment. That level of security for studying penguins and ice cores seems excessive. What is beneath the ice? What did Admiral Byrd really see in 1947? What are the geometric structures detected by satellite? Why did the Lake Vostok drilling stop just before breakthrough? And why does every major power on Earth agree, despite disagreeing on almost everything else, that Antarctica must remain restricted? The answers are down there, beneath miles of ice, in the darkness, waiting. And based on the level of secrecy, based on the international cooperation to keep people away, those answers are something that would change everything. Something that challenges who we are, where we came from, and whether we are truly alone on this planet. The frozen continent holds secrets, and those secrets are being actively protected. Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, the cradle of civilization, or so we are taught. Around 3000 BC, the Sumerians emerged seemingly from nowhere with fully developed writing, advanced mathematics, sophisticated astronomy, and complex social structures. No gradual development, no primitive phase. They appeared with knowledge, complete knowledge. Knowledge they claimed was given to them by the gods. Gods they called the Anunnaki. The word Anunnaki appears in thousands of cuneiform tablets. It translates roughly to those who from heaven to earth came. Not metaphorical heaven, not spiritual realm. The Sumerian texts are specific. They describe the Anunnaki as physical beings who descended from the sky in flying vehicles, who established cities, who taught humans agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, and metallurgy, and most importantly for our investigation, who came to Earth for a specific purpose: mining. The tablets describe an operation, a mission. The Anunnaki needed gold, vast quantities of gold, not for decoration, not for currency, for technological purposes that the texts hint at but do not fully explain. They established mining operations on Earth. Initially, the Anunnaki themselves did the mining work, digging deep into the earth, extracting gold from beneath the surface. But the work was brutal, exhausting, and after what the tablets describe as a rebellion of the worker gods, a solution was implemented: the creation of a worker species, humans. The tablets describe genetic manipulation, the mixing of Anunnaki essence with primitive hominids already existing on Earth, the creation of Adamu, the first human, purpose-built for labor, specifically for working in the mines, for going underground where the Anunnaki no longer wish to go. This is not interpretation. This is direct translation from multiple sources: the Atrahasis epic, the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh. All describe human creation as an engineering project, a solution to a labor problem. Now, conventional scholars treat these texts as mythology, symbolic stories about the development of civilization. But read the actual tablets. The language is not poetic, it is technical. It describes specific procedures, genetic combinations, trial and error, failed attempts before success. It reads less like religious creation myth and more like laboratory notes. And there is a specific location mentioned repeatedly in these texts: the Abzu, described as Enki's domain. Enki, one of the primary Anunnaki, the god of wisdom and engineering. His realm was not in the sky. It was not on the surface. The Abzu is consistently described as being beneath the earth, an underground domain, a place of vast chambers and advanced technology, a place where the genetic engineering occurred, where the worker species was created, where the mining operations were coordinated. The Sumerian city of Eridu, considered the oldest city in Mesopotamia, was built directly above what texts describe as an entrance to the Abzu. Eridu's temple complex, the Abzu, literally translates to Temple of the Abzu. Archaeological excavations at Eridu have revealed something interesting. The foundations go deep, much deeper than necessary for the visible structures, and there are sealed passages, corridors that were deliberately filled in antiquity, leading down into bedrock. Where they lead, no one has been allowed to excavate. The tablets describe the Abzu as having multiple levels, different chambers for different purposes, living quarters for the Anunnaki, laboratories for genetic work, storage facilities for mined gold, and most intriguingly, passages connecting to other underground locations. A network. When Enki speaks of traveling from the Abzu to other cities, the texts do not describe surface travel. They describe going through the depths, through underground routes. Look at the Sumerian king list, a text that chronicles the rulers of ancient Sumer. It begins with kings who reigned before the flood, and their reign lengths are extraordinary, tens of thousands of years. One king reigns for 43,200 years, another for 36,000 years. Standard academic interpretation is that these are mythological exaggerations, symbolic numbers. But the list transitions smoothly from these long-reigning kings to historical kings with normal human lifespans. Same document, same format, same matter-of-fact tone. Why would scribes carefully record historical data and then suddenly switch to pure fantasy without any indication of the change? Unless the long-reigning kings were not human, unless they were Anunnaki, beings with significantly longer lifespans, beings who lived primarily underground, where conditions could be controlled, where aging might occur differently, where protection from solar radiation and surface environmental factors could extend life considerably. The texts describe the flood as a catastrophic event that destroyed surface civilization but from which humanity survived underground. The story of Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh describes not just a boat but a sealed vessel, a structure that could protect inhabitants not just from water but from atmospheric catastrophe. And after the flood subsides, humanity emerges from below, returns to the surface, rebuilds. This pattern repeats across multiple Mesopotamian texts: survival through descent, preservation underground. And the Anunnaki do not leave Earth after the flood. They continue to interact with humanity for thousands of years after, but their presence becomes less direct, more hidden. The texts describe them withdrawing from public view, maintaining contact through intermediaries, through specially chosen humans who served as liaisons, kings who claimed divine authority not through metaphor but through actual bloodline, through genetic descent from the Anunnaki. Now, here is where this connects to our underground empire theory. If the Anunnaki established mining operations deep in the earth, if they created vast underground facilities to process and store materials, if they genetically engineered humans specifically to work in these underground environments, then what happened to those facilities when the Anunnaki supposedly left? Did they just abandon them? Did they collapse the mines and seal the chambers? Or are they still there, still functional, still occupied, either by the Anunnaki themselves, living in the depths away from surface humans they no longer wish to directly control, or by their descendants, hybrid lineages, or even by advanced humans, breakaway civilizations that maintained the technology and knowledge while surface humanity descended into the Dark Ages? The Sumerian texts describe technology that matches what we have found in places like Romania and Turkey: energy fields, holographic displays, genetic knowledge, underground networks. They describe it as the domain of the gods. But what if the gods were simply more advanced beings? What if their underground realm, the Abzu, was not mythology but an actual location? A vast subterranean complex that still exists beneath the ancient lands of Mesopotamia, Iraq. Modern-day Iraq sits atop ancient Sumer, and Iraq has been a conflict zone for decades. Multiple wars, constant military presence, and during those conflicts, there have been persistent reports of discoveries, of soldiers stumbling into underground chambers, of ancient sites being immediately secured by intelligence services, of artifacts being shipped out under classified protocols. None of this makes the news. None of it enters academic channels. But the reports exist. The witnesses exist. What did the Anunnaki really build down there? What knowledge did they leave behind? And most importantly, did they ever truly leave? Or did they simply go deeper, beyond the reach of surface humans, into realms we call myth because we cannot imagine they are real? The Sumerian texts are not vague mythology. They are historical records, technical documentation, and they all point to the same conclusion, that human civilization began not on the surface, but underground, in the realm of beings who came from elsewhere, who needed Earth's resources, who engineered us for a purpose. and who built an empire beneath our feet that may still exist today. The Abzu is not legend. It is a location, and finding it would answer every question we have been asking. 12,800 years ago, something catastrophic happened to Earth. The evidence is written in ice cores, sediment layers, and the geological record itself. A sudden, dramatic temperature drop, mass extinctions across multiple continents, the disappearance of megafauna species that had thrived for millions of years, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, all gone within what appears to be a very short time frame. This event is called the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis, and it changes everything we think we know about human history. The theory, supported by growing evidence, suggests that a comet or asteroid fragmented in Earth's atmosphere and impacted the ice sheets covering North America and Northern Europe. The result was immediate and devastating. Massive flooding as ice melted rapidly, wildfires spanning entire continents, atmospheric dust blocking sunlight for years, temperature fluctuations that made surface survival nearly impossible. This was not a regional disaster. This was global catastrophe. And here is what conventional archaeology does not want to address. If there was an advanced civilization existing before this event, a civilization that had not yet developed writing as we know it, or whose records were destroyed in the cataclysm, we would have almost no evidence of their existence. Almost, but not quite. Göbekli Tepe, southeastern Turkey, discovered in 1994 but not excavated seriously until the mid-1990s. What they found there should not exist according to our timeline of human development. Massive stone pillars, T-shaped megalithic structures weighing up to 20 tons each, arranged in circular formations, decorated with intricate carvings of animals, symbols, and abstract designs. The level of sophistication is extraordinary, and the dating is what destroys conventional timelines. Göbekli Tepe was built around 9600 BC, nearly 12,000 years ago. This predates agriculture, predates pottery, predates everything we consider necessary for complex construction projects. We are taught that hunter-gatherers built this, nomadic people with no permanent settlements, no food surplus, no social organization beyond small tribal groups. These people supposedly organized labor forces, quarried 20-ton stones, transported them, erected them with precision, and carved detailed artwork. Then they buried it, deliberately. The entire complex was carefully filled in with soil, preserving it for millennia. Why would anyone build something so elaborate and then immediately bury it, unless they were not burying it for preservation, unless they were hiding it, protecting it, from something that was coming, something that would destroy everything on the surface? The Younger Dryas event happened around 10,800 BC. Göbekli Tepe's construction dates to just before this event. The timeline matches perfectly. A civilization advanced enough to create massive stone monuments realizes catastrophe is approaching. They preserve their most important site by burying it. They themselves retreat underground. And surface humanity, the survivors, the ones without access to underground shelters, are thrown back into a survival state that takes thousands of years to recover from. This pattern appears globally, across dozens of sites, structures that predate known civilization, that show advanced knowledge, that were either deliberately buried or sealed, as if someone was preserving information for future discovery, future generations. After the catastrophe passed, look at the genetic evidence. Around 10,000 years ago, human DNA shows what scientists call a population bottleneck, a dramatic reduction in genetic diversity, as if the human population crashed, severely, to perhaps a few thousand individuals, maybe less. This is not speculation. This is measurable genetic data. Something happened that nearly wiped out humanity. And the survivors, whoever they were, carried forward only a fraction of the genetic diversity that existed before. Every major culture on Earth has flood myths. Not just floods, global floods, world-ending floods. The Epic of Gilgamesh, Noah's Ark, the Hindu Matsya Purana, Greek myth of Deucalion, Aztec, Mayan, Incan legends, Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories, Native American traditions, Chinese mythology. Over 200 distinct cultures separated by oceans and thousands of miles all tell versions of the same story. Catastrophic flood. Most of humanity destroyed. Small group of survivors. Usually survivors who were warned in advance, who had time to prepare, who built vessels or found shelter. Underground shelter. The Hopi people of North America have detailed oral traditions about previous worlds. They speak of living in 3 worlds before this one. Each world ended in catastrophe. Each time, the Ant people, beings who lived underground, sheltered the Hopi ancestors in subterranean chambers until the surface became safe again. The Hopi have specific emergence points, locations where their ancestors came up from below. One of those locations is in the Grand Canyon, in the restricted area we discussed earlier. The Navajo tell similar stories. Emergence from lower worlds, climbing up through a hollow reed or tunnel, being guided by beings who lived in the depths. These are not vague myths. These are detailed historical accounts passed down through generations. Accounts that include geographic locations, specific timelines, and descriptions of the underground realms. Warm, lit by artificial light, large enough to house entire communities. Tibet, the High Plateau. Buddhist texts describe Agartha and Shambhala, underground kingdoms housing advanced spiritual masters, survivors of previous world ages. These texts specify that during times of surface catastrophe, certain humans were taken below, protected, taught, and then returned to the surface to help rebuild civilization. The texts describe vast libraries of knowledge preserved in these underground realms. Technology, science, spiritual wisdom, all maintained while surface humanity struggled to survive. The timeline makes sense. An advanced pre-flood civilization, perhaps not global but certainly widespread, develops sophisticated technology. They have mathematics, astronomy, engineering. They build on the surface, but they also build underground, for mining, for storage, for research. And their astronomical observations tell them something is coming. Comet fragments, orbital instabilities. They calculate impact scenarios. They prepare. Not everyone can be saved. The underground facilities have limited capacity. Choices are made. Some humans are taken below. Most are left on the surface. The impact occurs. Surface civilization is destroyed in fire and flood. The survivors underground wait. Years, decades, perhaps generations, until sensors or scouts confirm the surface is habitable again. Then they emerge, not to a pristine world, to a devastated one, to a world where most of human knowledge has been lost, where the few surface survivors are traumatized, scattered, desperate. The underground survivors become the gods of mythology, the civilizers, the teachers. They help surface humans rebuild, teach agriculture, astronomy, architecture. They establish the first post-flood civilizations: Sumer, Egypt, Indus Valley, Mesoamerica, all appearing suddenly, fully formed, with knowledge they should not possess, because that knowledge was not developed gradually. It was preserved, underground, and brought back up when the time was right. But the underground facilities do not close. They remain active, occupied. Some of the advanced humans choose to stay below, away from the surface world, developing separately, advancing while surface civilization slowly progresses through Bronze Age, Iron Age, gradually relearning what was once common knowledge. And every few thousand years, when surface civilization becomes too advanced, too dangerous, too close to rediscovering the old knowledge, something happens. Wars, plagues, collapses, almost as if someone is managing surface development. keeping humanity at a certain level, not primitive, but not too advanced, not advanced enough to access the depths, not advanced enough to discover what is down there. This is not conspiracy. This is pattern recognition. This is looking at the evidence, the geological record, the genetic data, the myths, the archaeological anomalies, and seeing that they all point to the same conclusion. We are not the first advanced civilization. We are not even the second or third. We are the latest surface civilization in a long cycle of rise and fall. And each time civilization falls, some survive below. Each time they preserve knowledge. Each time they wait. And when the surface is ready, they emerge and guide the rebuilding. But this time is different. This time, surface civilization has technology that approaches what existed before the last catastrophe: nuclear weapons, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence. We are reaching the level where we might discover the underground empire ourselves, where we might breach their security, where we might force contact, and that terrifies those in power. Both surface governments who have already made contact and want to control disclosure, and the underground civilization itself, who may not want their existence revealed to the masses. The pre-flood civilization did not disappear. It went underground, and it never left. The discoveries did not stop with ancient sites. They continue today, right now. But when modern explorers find evidence of underground structures, advanced technology, or inexplicable chambers deep beneath the earth, something predictable happens. Classification, confiscation, career destruction, and silence. Phil Schneider, a geologist and structural engineer who claimed to have worked on deep underground military base construction projects for the United States government. In the 1990s, he began giving public lectures about what he witnessed. He described bases extending multiple levels below the surface. Not simple bunkers, multi-story facilities connected by high-speed transit systems. He spoke about encountering non-human entities during excavation work in Dulce, New Mexico, about firefights underground, about technology that seemed impossible, about being asked to sign non-disclosure agreements that threatened life imprisonment for violations. Schneider gave his last public lecture in 1995. He claimed he was being followed, that his life was in danger, that he would not live much longer. In January 1996, he was found dead in his apartment. The official cause of death was suicide by strangulation, except the autopsy showed broken fingers, defensive wounds, and the method of death, wrapping a catheter tube around his own neck, was physically implausible given his injuries. His wife maintains he was murdered. His lectures were scrubbed from mainstream platforms. His claims dismissed as paranoid delusions. But here is the problem with dismissing Schneider. Other witnesses tell similar stories. Cave exploration teams finding sealed passages with modern security systems. Miners breaking through rock into finished corridors that do not appear on any construction maps. Geologists conducting seismic surveys detecting massive voids beneath populated areas. Voids that should not exist, that do not match any natural geological formation. In 2004, a team of spelunkers exploring an unmapped cave system in the Carpathian Mountains of Romania, not far from the Bucegi site, encountered a steel door, underground, miles from any known human settlement. A modern security door, with an electronic keypad, in a cave system that supposedly no one had ever explored. When they reported the discovery, they were visited by Romanian intelligence services, told the area was now restricted, told they had not seen what they saw. The cave entrance was sealed within a week, with concrete, with no archaeological investigation, no scientific study, just immediate closure. Turkish construction workers expanding the Marmara tunnel system beneath Istanbul in 2013 broke through into a chamber, not a natural cave, a finished room, with smooth walls, with what appeared to be ventilation ducts. The chamber was not on any historical map, not in any archaeological record. The construction was halted for 3 days, then resumed. Workers were rotated out, new crews brought in, and the official position became that nothing unusual was found, just irregular geology. But workers who were present, speaking anonymously, described being told to forget what they saw, being made to sign documents, being threatened with termination and legal action if they spoke publicly. China presents an interesting case, because the Chinese government does not even pretend to allow investigation of certain areas. There are regions in western China, in the Taklamakan Desert, where satellite imagery shows geometric patterns, perfectly straight lines extending for miles, right angles where no right angles should exist. When independent researchers attempt to visit these areas, they are turned back by military checkpoints. The official explanation is sensitive military testing ranges. But some of these patterns were visible in declassified satellite photos from the 1970s, before modern construction, before current military facilities were built. Something was already there. Then there are the seismologists, scientists who spend their careers studying Earth's interior using seismic waves. Several have privately reported anomalies, signals that bounce back in ways that suggest artificial structures, voids that are too regular to be natural caves, density variations that indicate constructed spaces rather than geological formations. But publishing these findings is career suicide. Peer review becomes hostile. Funding disappears. So the data sits in private files, discussed quietly among colleagues who know something is wrong but cannot say so publicly. In 2017, a mining operation in South Africa, working at a depth of over 3 kilometers, the deepest gold mine in the world, reported breaking into a cavity, not a natural fissure, a space. Workers described seeing walls that appeared machined, smooth surfaces in rock that should show natural fracture patterns. The mining company immediately sealed the breach, claimed it was a safety issue, potential structural instability. But geologists who worked on that project later stated, off the record, that the cavity extended beyond what their instruments could measure, that they detected airflow from somewhere deeper, that whatever they broke into was not isolated. It was part of something larger. These testimonies share common elements: modern security, protecting ancient sites, immediate government response to discoveries, classification of information, threats against witnesses, and always, the discoveries involve going deeper, finding that whatever exists underground extends beyond what anyone expected, that the networks are larger, more extensive, more sophisticated than surface authorities want to admit. The pattern suggests active concealment, not just of ancient history, of current activity. Something is down there. Either it never left, or it came back, or we are in the process of discovering what has always been there, and those in positions of power, whether surface governments or deeper authorities, have decided that the general public cannot know. Why? What would happen if people knew for certain that vast underground structures exist beneath us, that some of them are occupied, that there is an entire realm of existence happening in the depths while surface humanity remains ignorant? Would society collapse? Would religions crumble? Would governments lose legitimacy? Or is it something more practical? Control over technology, control over resources, control over access to knowledge that would redistribute power away from current holders. Whatever the reason, the suppression continues. Modern discoveries are buried as fast as ancient ones. Witnesses are silenced. Evidence is classified. And the official narrative remains unchanged. There is nothing down there. Nothing to see. Nothing to discover. Move along. Keep living on the surface. Keep believing the story you were told. And whatever you do, do not dig too deep. Do not ask too many questions. Do not notice the patterns. Because once you do, once you see how consistent the cover-up is, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to comfortable ignorance. You know, and knowing is dangerous. The underground empire is not ancient history. It is current events, and the testimonies of those who have glimpsed it, despite the risks, despite the threats, tell us one thing clearly. It is real, it is vast, and it is very carefully hidden. Let us talk about what cannot be discussed in polite academic circles, the technology question, because if an advanced civilization exists underground, if it has existed for thousands of years, what kind of technology would it possess? And more importantly, why would that technology be suppressed? The answer threatens every power structure on the surface world. Start with energy. Our entire modern civilization runs on fossil fuels, nuclear fission, and increasingly, renewable sources like solar and wind. But all of these methods are inefficient. They require massive infrastructure. They generate waste. They can be controlled, metered, and monetized. What if there is another way? A way that has been known for thousands of years but deliberately kept from surface humanity? Nikola Tesla spent the final decades of his life working on wireless energy transmission. Free energy, he called it. The ability to tap into the Earth's electromagnetic field and draw unlimited power without burning anything, without splitting atoms, without massive solar farms. He claimed it was possible. He claimed he had working prototypes. When he died in 1943, his papers were immediately seized by the FBI. Classified. Many of those papers have never been released. The official reason is national security. But security against what? Against giving humanity unlimited free energy. Tesla was not insane. He was not a crackpot. He invented alternating current, the Tesla coil, radio transmission, X-ray technology. His contributions to modern electrical engineering are foundational. So when he said free energy was possible, he meant it. And when his research disappeared into classified vaults immediately upon his death, that tells you everything about whether his claims were legitimate. Now consider the underground facilities we have discussed. Derinkuyu, the Malta Hypogeum, the Romanian Chamber. These places have been sealed for thousands of years in some cases, yet some show no evidence of fire pits. No soot on the ceilings. No charcoal remains from torches. How were they lit? How did the inhabitants see to carve, to navigate, to live? The standard answer is reflected sunlight through shafts. But many of these chambers are too deep, too far from surface light. There has to be another explanation. An energy source we do not acknowledge. The acoustic properties of certain underground chambers suggest they were designed to work with specific frequencies, resonance chambers. At the Malta Hypogeum, the 110 Hz frequency is not random. That frequency corresponds to wavelengths that affect human consciousness. Modern research has shown that exposure to low-frequency sounds in that range can alter brain activity, induce trance states, enhance meditation. Why would ancient people know this? Unless they understood something about the relationship between frequency, energy, and consciousness that we are only rediscovering. There is a reason certain technologies are systematically suppressed. It is not just about energy, it is about control. If energy is free, unlimited, accessible to anyone, then you cannot control populations through scarcity. You cannot create dependence. You cannot monetize survival. The entire economic system that concentrates wealth and power depends on control of resources, energy, water, food. If any of these become freely available through advanced technology, the control structure collapses. Look at what happened to other inventors. Eugene Malov, a scientist and editor who investigated cold fusion and alternative energy, beaten to death in 2004. The murder was officially a robbery gone wrong, though nothing was stolen. Stanley Meyer, inventor of a water fuel cell that supposedly split water into hydrogen and oxygen using less energy than combustion returned. He died suddenly in 1998 after meeting with potential investors. The official cause was a brain aneurysm. His technology disappeared. John Hutchison, a Canadian inventor who demonstrated what he called the Hutchison effect, a phenomenon where objects would levitate or metals would fuse at room temperature using electromagnetic frequencies. His laboratory was raided multiple times, his equipment confiscated, his work discredited. The pattern repeats. Someone discovers or rediscovers technology that threatens the status quo. They attempt to publish or commercialize it. They die under suspicious circumstances, or they are discredited, or their work is seized under national security provisions. And the technology vanishes, not because it does not work, but because it works too well. Now, imagine an underground civilization that never lost this knowledge, that has been using zero-point energy, or whatever we want to call it, for thousands of years. That understands the relationship between electromagnetic fields, consciousness, and matter. That can manipulate gravity, heal using frequency, communicate without electronics. What would that civilization look like? What would it be capable of? It would not need oil, would not need coal or natural gas, would not need massive power plants or electrical grids. It would be completely independent, completely self-sufficient, and completely invisible to surface detection methods that look for heat signatures, radio transmissions, or conventional energy use. An underground empire, using technology we do not acknowledge, could exist right beneath our feet, consuming no fossil fuels, generating no electromagnetic noise that matches our expectations, completely undetectable by the methods we use to find things. And here is the terrifying implication. If surface governments know this technology exists, if they have access to it through classified programs or recovered artifacts, why would they not share it with the public? Because sharing it means losing control. It means the end of centralized power. It means every human on Earth becomes energy independent, resource independent. The implications go beyond just electricity, food production, water purification, manufacturing, transportation. Every sector of modern life that requires energy suddenly becomes decentralized. And decentralization means the end of the control grid. There is another possibility, that surface governments do not have full access to this technology, that they have fragments, hints, recovered devices they cannot fully understand or replicate. And the underground civilization, if it exists, keeps it that way, maintains technological superiority, ensures that surface humanity remains dependent on primitive energy sources while they continue advancing. Why would they do this? Perhaps because they remember what happened last time surface humanity became too advanced, 12,800 years ago. Younger Dryas, catastrophe. Maybe they are controlling surface development, keeping us limited, not out of malice, out of caution, out of fear that we will destroy ourselves and the planet again if we gain access to technology we are not spiritually mature enough to handle. The technology question is not academic, it is not theoretical, it is practical, it is current. It is the reason whistleblowers die. It is the reason certain areas are off limits. It is the reason patents get classified under national security orders. Because someone, somewhere, knows that the technology exists, knows that it would change everything, and has decided that change is too dangerous, too destabilizing, too revolutionary, so the suppression continues. The inventors die or disappear. The papers are classified, the sites are sealed, and surface humanity continues burning fossil fuels, building massive infrastructure, fighting wars over resources that could be rendered obsolete by knowledge that already exists somewhere in the depths beneath us. The underground empire, if it exists, might be the most energy-efficient, technologically advanced civilization Earth has ever seen, and we will never know, because knowing would free us. And freedom is the last thing those in control, surface or subsurface, want us to have. There is another dimension to this mystery that most researchers overlook. They focus on the physical structures, the engineering, the artifacts. But what if the underground chambers were not just shelters or mines? What if they were designed for something else entirely? Something that ancient cultures understood but modern science dismisses? The transformation of human consciousness itself. Go back to Malta, the hypogeum, that 110 Hz frequency. Modern neuroscience has discovered something fascinating about this specific frequency. When the human brain is exposed to it, particularly in an enclosed space that amplifies the resonance, it triggers changes in prefrontal cortex activity, the area responsible for decision-making, social behavior, and personality expression. People who experience this frequency report enhanced creativity, emotional releases, even visionary experiences. This is not mysticism. This is measurable brain activity, changing in response to specific sound waves. The ancient builders knew this. They carved that chamber specifically to create that frequency. They understood that certain acoustic environments could alter consciousness, could open perception, could allow humans to access states of awareness that are normally unreachable. Why? What were they trying to achieve? Or perhaps the better question is, what were they trying to help humans remember? Look at the pattern of underground sacred sites across cultures. Caves have always been places of initiation, vision quests, shamanic journeys. The descent into darkness is a universal metaphor for inner transformation. But what if it is not metaphorical? What if going underground, into specific chambers designed with precise acoustic and electromagnetic properties, actually facilitates expanded consciousness? What if the ancients were not being symbolic? What if they were being literal? The pineal gland, a small endocrine gland in the center of the brain. Ancient mystics called it the third eye, the seat of the soul. Modern science dismissed this as superstition until recent research revealed something unexpected. The pineal gland contains crystals, specifically calcite microcrystals that are piezoelectric. They respond to electromagnetic fields. They can transduce energy, and they produce DMT, dimethyltryptamine, one of the most powerful psychoactive compounds known to science. A compound that naturally occurs in the human brain. A compound that, when activated, produces profound visionary experiences, encounters with seemingly autonomous entities, and the sensation of accessing other dimensions or realities. What if certain underground chambers were designed to stimulate the pineal gland, to activate its crystalline structures using specific frequencies, to induce controlled DMT release that allowed initiates to perceive beyond normal sensory limits? This would explain why so many ancient traditions speak of underground realms as places where humans could commune with gods, ancestors, or otherworldly beings. They were not fantasizing. They were describing actual experiences induced by the technology of consciousness built into these chambers. The Earth itself generates electromagnetic frequencies. The Schumann resonance, 7.83 Hz, the fundamental frequency of the Earth's electromagnetic field. Human brainwaves naturally synchronize with this frequency during deep meditation and certain sleep states. But underground, especially in chambers designed with specific geometries, these frequencies can be amplified, focused, directed. The underground environment, when properly designed, becomes a consciousness amplification device. This is not New Age speculation. This is physics meeting neuroscience meeting ancient wisdom, and it suggests that the underground empire, if it exists, understands something that surface civilization has forgotten. That consciousness is not just an emergent property of brain chemistry, it is a field phenomenon. It can be influenced by environment, by frequency, by electromagnetic conditions, and those conditions can be engineered. Think about what this means. If you can alter consciousness through environmental design, you can enhance human capabilities. Telepathy stops being supernatural and becomes explainable as sensitivity to electromagnetic fields that carry information. Remote viewing becomes possible if consciousness is not confined to the skull, but exists as a field that can extend and perceive at a distance. Precognition makes sense if consciousness can access information outside of linear time when properly tuned. Every mystical tradition speaks of these abilities. Siddhis in Hinduism, the gifts of the spirit in Christianity, the powers developed through Taoist cultivation practices, Aboriginal dreamtime navigation, Native American vision quest revelations, all describing the same phenomena: expanded human consciousness, accessing information and abilities beyond normal limits. And all of these traditions emphasize specific practices: isolation, darkness, caves, going underground, fasting, sound, rhythm, all techniques that alter brain chemistry and electromagnetic sensitivity. What if the underground chambers are consciousness technology? What if that is their primary purpose? Not hiding from enemies, not mining operations, but sacred technology designed to evolve human awareness, to reconnect humans with capabilities we once had but lost, or never fully developed on the surface, but could develop in the right environment. This would explain why these sites are so carefully hidden, why access is restricted, because if people knew, if they understood that specific underground locations could expand consciousness, activate dormant abilities, reconnect them with dimensions of reality that modern culture denies exist, they would flock to these places, and those in power would lose their most valuable asset: the control of human perception, the limitation of what people believe is possible. An awakened humanity is an ungovernable humanity. People who can perceive directly, who can access information without approved channels, who can develop abilities that make them independent of external authority, cannot be controlled through propaganda, fear, or artificial scarcity. This is the real threat. Not energy technology, not physical resources, consciousness itself. Human potential unleashed. The underground empire might not be hiding advanced machines. It might be hiding advanced humans, people who never lost the connection to expanded consciousness, who maintained the practices, the technologies of awareness, while surface humanity descended into materialist limitation. People who can perceive the earth as a living system, who can communicate without words, who can heal through intention and frequency, who live in harmony with natural electromagnetic fields rather than drowning in the artificial frequencies of modern technology. Or perhaps they are not entirely human anymore. Perhaps thousands of years of living underground, of using consciousness technology, of breeding and training specifically for expanded awareness, has created something new, a subspecies, a divergent branch of humanity that is to us what we are to our ancestors 50,000 years ago. Different, more capable, operating on principles we no longer understand. Going underground might not be about hiding from danger. It might be about entering an environment where human consciousness can evolve beyond surface limitations, where the electromagnetic conditions, the isolation from solar radiation, the acoustic properties, all combine to create optimal conditions for consciousness expansion. The surface world keeps us limited, distracted, fragmented. The underground might be where we become what we were always meant to be. And that possibility, more than any technology or resource, is what they cannot allow us to discover. If this underground empire exists, if these networks span the globe, then there must be access points, entrances, ways in and ways out. And the question becomes, where are they? Can they still be found? And more importantly, are they still being used? The answer is yes, but finding them requires knowing what to look for, and understanding that most access points are either heavily guarded, deliberately obscured, or located in places where ordinary people cannot easily reach them. Start with Egypt, the Giza Plateau. Everyone knows about the pyramids, but beneath those pyramids lies something that receives far less attention: the Osiris Shaft, discovered officially in 1999, though locals had known about it for decades. A vertical shaft descending 100 feet beneath the causeway of the second pyramid. At the bottom, a chamber filled with water, and beneath that water, according to divers who have explored it, another chamber, and beneath that, passages leading deeper, passages that are now sealed, officially for preservation. Unofficially, because they lead somewhere the Egyptian government does not want explored. The water is not natural groundwater. It is too pure, too consistent in temperature, and it is maintained at a precise level, as if regulated. Some researchers believe the Osiris shaft is not a tomb. It is an entrance, a flooded access point to tunnels that extend beneath the entire Giza complex, tunnels that might connect to the network described in the Romanian chamber, the tunnel pointing toward Egypt, the one that supposedly links the Bucegi Mountains to the land of the pharaohs, Jerusalem. Beneath the Temple Mount lies a labyrinth, miles of tunnels and chambers carved into bedrock. Some are documented. Tourists can visit certain sections, but there are areas that remain sealed, blocked by the Israeli government, the Islamic Waqf, and international agreements that prevent excavation beneath the most sensitive religious site on Earth. Why? The official reason is preventing conflict between religious groups, but archaeological surveys using ground-penetrating radar have detected massive voids beneath the mount, chambers that do not correspond to any known historical construction, and passages that extend beyond the boundaries of the temple complex, leading north, leading south, leading down. Every major religion considers this location sacred. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all believe something of immense spiritual importance exists here. What if they are all right? What if the sacred presence is not metaphysical, but physical? An entrance to the underground realm where consciousness technology exists, where the divine, as ancient people understood it, could be directly experienced. Access to this entrance has been fought over for thousands of years, not because of the surface structures, because of what lies beneath. China presents a unique case, because the Chinese government does not deny that massive underground complexes exist. They acknowledge building enormous subterranean cities for civil defense, underground facilities capable of housing millions in case of nuclear war. Official tours are available in some cities. Dixia Cheng beneath Beijing. Similar complexes under other major urban centers. But here is the question that no one asks publicly. Why are these facilities so much larger than necessary? Why do some passages extend far beyond what civil defense would require? And why are certain sections completely off limits, even to government officials who built them? The answer might be that they are not entirely modern construction. They might be expansions of something that already existed. China has 5,000 years of recorded history, longer than any other continuous civilization. Their ancient texts reference underground kingdoms, dragon palaces beneath mountains, the Yellow Emperor descending into the earth to receive wisdom. These might not be myths. They might be historical accounts of accessing the underground empire. And modern China, in building their defensive tunnels, might have discovered and incorporated ancient access points that were already there. The Vatican, miles of catacombs beneath Rome. Public sections contain Christian burials from the first centuries after Christ, but the catacombs extend much deeper than tourist areas, much farther. And the Vatican maintains strict control over who can access the deeper levels. Researchers who have obtained rare permission describe passages that predate Christianity by centuries, chambers carved in styles that do not match Roman engineering, and sealed doors, modern doors, with electronic locks, in tunnels that are supposedly 2,000 years old. What is the Vatican protecting? They claim it is sacred relics, ancient manuscripts, the historical records of the Church, but some researchers believe it is access, that beneath the Vatican lies an entrance to the larger network, and the Catholic Church, throughout its history, has maintained control of this entrance, has known about the underground empire, has possibly been in contact with it. This would explain certain mysteries. The sudden appearance of advanced knowledge in medieval Europe, the esoteric practices of secret societies connected to the church, the vast wealth accumulated despite vows of poverty. If you control an access point to an advanced civilization, if you can trade information or technology, you control power that secular authorities cannot match. Then there are the natural access points, caves that locals avoid, mountains where people disappear, areas where compasses spin and electronics fail. The Superstition Mountains in Arizona, Mount Shasta in California, the Carpathian Mountains in Romania, the Andes in Peru, all locations with persistent legends of entrances to inner earth, of people who went into certain caves and never returned, or returned changed, unable to explain where they had been. Speaking of underground cities and beings who are almost human but not quite, most of these access points are not on maps, not marked, not accessible to casual hikers. They require local knowledge, guides who are trusted, and even then there is danger. Not from natural hazards, from guardians. People report being turned back by feelings of overwhelming dread, by sudden illness, by equipment failure at specific locations, as if something is actively discouraging exploration, as if the access points are protected, not by physical barriers, by frequencies, by technology that affects consciousness directly. That makes people turn around without understanding why. And then there are the military installations built in remote locations, deep underground bases, officially for command and control during nuclear war. But some of these bases are located nowhere near strategic targets, in the middle of deserts, beneath mountains in isolated ranges, with security protocols that exceed nuclear weapons facilities, with construction costs that cannot be justified by stated purposes. What if these are not just military bases? What if they are interface points, locations where surface governments maintain contact with the underground empire, where negotiations occur, where technology is exchanged, where the two civilizations, surface and subsurface, coordinate to ensure neither threatens the other? The access points exist. They are real. Some are ancient, carefully hidden and protected by those who know. Some are modern, disguised as military or religious sites. All are controlled. All are monitored. And all are kept secret from the general public because allowing free access would mean acknowledging what lies beneath, would mean admitting that human civilization extends far deeper than the surface world, would mean revealing that we are not alone on our own planet, that we share it with others who chose long ago to live in the depths, and who continue to live there still. Finding an entrance is possible. Gaining access through it is another matter entirely. Step back. Look at the full scope of what we have explored. The underground cities, the global network, the suppressed discoveries, the ancient texts describing beings from beneath the earth, the modern testimonies of sealed chambers and classified sites. All of this points toward a conclusion that fundamentally challenges how we understand human history. We are not the first. We are not unique. We are the latest iteration in a cycle that has repeated itself over vast stretches of time, a cycle of rise and fall, advancement and catastrophe, surface civilization and underground survival. The mainstream narrative of human history is simple, linear, progressive. Humans evolved from primitive hunter-gatherers, gradually developed agriculture, built cities, invented writing, advanced through Bronze Age, Iron Age, Industrial Revolution, Information Age, each generation building on the previous, progress as a straight line upward from savage past to civilized present. But what if that narrative is wrong? What if human history is not a line but a spiral, repeating patterns across timescales so vast that we lose track of previous cycles? The evidence keeps appearing. Artifacts that should not exist in their time periods. The Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek analog computer from 100 BC, capable of predicting astronomical positions decades in advance. Technology that should not be possible with the mathematical and engineering knowledge supposedly available at that time. Baghdad batteries from 200 BC, Electric cells in ancient Mesopotamia. Why would anyone create batteries before electricity was discovered? Unless it had been discovered before, and then forgotten, and then discovered again in the 1800s as if for the first time. Precision stone cutting in megalithic structures worldwide. Polygonal masonry at Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where stones weighing hundreds of tons fit together so perfectly that you cannot slide a knife blade between them. No mortar. No explanation for how primitive tools could achieve such precision. The standard academic answer is patience and trial and error. But that answer ignores the mathematics, the angles, the three-dimensional complexity of interlocking stones that require advanced geometric understanding. This is not simple stonework. This is engineering that rivals modern capabilities, and it appears in cultures separated by oceans, as if the knowledge came from a common source, a source that predates the cultures we can trace. Göbekli Tepe proves that advanced construction existed before agriculture, before civilization, as we define it, which means the timeline is wrong, which means our ancestors were not primitive. They were remnants, survivors of something that came before, carrying forward fragments of knowledge from previous cycles, building what they could remember, preserving what they could in stone because stone survives. Everything else, papyrus, parchment, digital storage, degrades over millennia. Stone remains. And the message carved in stone is that we have been here before. We have risen before. We have fallen before. The geological record shows multiple extinction events. Not just the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Not just the Younger Dryas 12,800 years ago. There are layers, events happening in cycles. Some researchers have identified a pattern. Approximately every 12,000 years, something happens. A reset, whether it is comet impacts, solar micronovas, magnetic pole reversals, or a combination of factors, the Earth undergoes catastrophic change. And each time, surface civilization is devastated, but not entirely destroyed, because the survivors go underground. They wait, they preserve, and when conditions stabilize, they emerge and rebuild. This explains mythology. Every culture has stories of previous world ages. The Hopi speak of 4 worlds. We are living in the 4th. The previous 3 were destroyed by fire, by ice, by flood. Each time, the ant people sheltered survivors underground. Hindu cosmology describes yugas, ages lasting thousands or millions of years, cycles of creation and destruction, golden ages where humans possess godlike abilities, dark ages where knowledge is lost and humans struggle in ignorance. We are currently in Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, the lowest point in the cycle, where we have forgotten who we are, forgotten what we are capable of, forgotten the previous ages when humanity was far more advanced. Plato wrote about Atlantis, an advanced civilization destroyed 9,000 years before his time. He claimed this was not myth, but history passed down through Egyptian priests, a civilization that possessed technology and knowledge beyond anything in the ancient world, a civilization that sank beneath the waves in a day and a night. Mainstream archaeology dismisses Atlantis as allegory, but what if Plato was reporting accurately? What if Atlantis, or whatever that civilization was actually called, existed during the previous cycle? And what if its destruction was the Younger Dryas event, the same catastrophe that appears in the geological record, the same event described in flood myths worldwide? If cyclical catastrophe is real, if it happens every 12,000 years with devastating regularity, then survival strategy becomes obvious. Do not rely on surface structures. They will be destroyed. Do not store knowledge in fragile formats. It will be lost. Go underground, build deep, preserve in stone, and maintain continuity across the cycle. This is exactly what we see. Underground cities built to last millennia, megalithic structures designed to survive cataclysm, astronomical knowledge encoded in stone so that future generations can recalculate the cycles. Everything points toward preparation, toward knowing that catastrophe is inevitable and planning accordingly. And here is the unsettling part. We might be approaching another cycle, the 12,800-year mark since the last major event. 12,800 years. Earth's magnetic field is weakening, faster than expected. The poles are shifting. Solar activity is increasing. The planet is experiencing climate instability that goes beyond human-caused carbon emissions. What if these are symptoms? What if the Earth goes through regular cycles of magnetic reversal that temporarily remove our protective shield against solar radiation? What if that is what causes the catastrophes? And what if those who built the underground empire knew this, knew the cycle, calculated the timing, and prepared? This would explain government behavior. If certain authorities know a cycle is coming, if they have access to ancient records or advanced modeling that shows Earth approaching another reset event, then their actions make sense. Build deep underground bases, seed vaults storing genetic material, suppress information that would cause panic, maintain control during the transition, ensure that when the surface world is devastated, a chosen few survive below to restart civilization. Again, just as it has happened before, multiple times across ages we can no longer remember. We think we are advanced. We think we are at the peak of human achievement. But what if we are barely recovered from the last fall? What if our current technology is primitive compared to what existed in previous cycles? What if the underground empire represents continuity, unbroken advancement across cycles while surface humanity repeatedly starts over from near zero? The ancients tried to warn us. They built monuments that survive catastrophe. They encoded knowledge in myths that persist across time. They told us explicitly that this has happened before and will happen again. But we stopped listening. We called it mythology, superstition, primitive ignorance. We elevated our own achievements and forgot that others came before, others who were perhaps greater, who survived by going underground, who wait still in the depths, watching us repeat the same patterns, waiting to see if this time we will remember, this time we will prepare, this time we will break the cycle instead of perpetuating it. History is not linear, it is cyclical, and we are not the pinnacle. We are a phase, one iteration among many. The underground empire knows this. They have seen it happen before. They represent the continuity while surface civilizations rise and fall like waves. We think we discovered electricity, flight, digital technology. But what if we rediscovered it? What if all of this existed in previous cycles? And the real achievement is not invention, but remembering what was always known. The cycle turns, the pattern continues. And beneath our feet, those who never forgot watch and wait. Now we arrive at the most speculative territory. The question that sounds like science fiction but refuses to go away. What if the Earth itself is not entirely solid? What if vast spaces exist deep within the planet? Spaces large enough to house civilizations, ecosystems, entire worlds that developed separately from the surface. This is the inner Earth hypothesis. And before dismissing it, consider that every major culture on Earth has traditions describing exactly this. Underground kingdoms, subterranean realms, places of light and life existing beneath the crust. Are they all wrong? Or are they all remembering something real? The Hollow Earth model, popularized in the 1700s and 1800s, suggested the planet was entirely hollow with openings at the poles. That version has been disproven by seismology. We know Earth has a solid inner core, a liquid outer core, and layers of mantle and crust. But here is what seismology also reveals. Massive voids, caverns of incredible size, spaces where seismic waves behave unexpectedly. The Earth is not uniformly solid. It is more like a honeycomb. Dense rock interspersed with vast hollow regions, some natural, some, perhaps, not. The Tibetan traditions speak of Agartha, an underground kingdom beneath the Himalayas, home to advanced beings, who have mastered both technology and spirituality, accessed through hidden cave systems that only the initiated can find. Similar stories appear in Hindu texts. The Nagas, serpent beings who live in Patala, the underworld realm. Not a hell, a physical place beneath the mountains, a place of great beauty and advanced knowledge. These descriptions are not vague mythology. They include geographic details, specific mountains, specific valleys, directions and landmarks that persist in oral tradition across thousands of years. Buddhism describes Shambhala, a hidden kingdom that exists in a different dimension or, according to some interpretations, deep within the earth. A place where enlightened masters preserve ancient wisdom during dark ages on the surface, where time moves differently, where consciousness operates at levels surface humans cannot normally access. The Dalai Lama, when asked about Shambhala, does not dismiss it as metaphor. He acknowledges it as a real place, accessible to those who have developed sufficient spiritual realization. South American traditions describe the same thing. The Inca spoke of a tunnel system beneath Cusco, passages leading to the land of the gods beneath the mountains. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived, the Inca sealed these tunnels and hid the entrances, protecting what lay below from invaders. Modern attempts to explore these tunnels have been blocked by the Peruvian government. The official reason is preserving indigenous sacred sites, but local shamans tell a different story. They say the tunnels are protected because they still lead somewhere, to places where the old ones went, where they remain still, waiting. The Greek myths place the underworld beneath the earth. Not just Hades, the realm of the dead, but Tartarus, a place of immense depth, where the Titans were imprisoned, where beings of great power existed in darkness. The rivers of the underworld, Styx, Acheron, Lethe, were described as actual flowing waters in vast caverns, not symbolic. Physical geography of an underworld realm that Greeks believed was literally beneath their feet. Even Norse mythology describes 9 realms: Midgard, the surface world; Asgard, the realm of gods, but also Svartalfheim, the realm of dark elves deep underground; and Nidavellir, where the dwarves dwelt, master craftsmen who forged magical artifacts, beings who lived their entire existence beneath the surface, who created technology that seemed magical to surface dwellers, who knew secrets of the earth that surface people had forgotten. The consistency is remarkable. Every major culture, every continent, all describing underground realms, all placing them beneath specific mountains, all suggesting these places are real, physical locations, not afterlife destinations, not spiritual dimensions, actual geographic places you could reach by going down far enough, by finding the right entrance, by being permitted entry. Modern physics provides interesting support. The Earth's interior is under extreme pressure, but pressure creates stability. At certain depths, the pressure is so great that empty spaces, if they formed during planetary formation, would remain stable, would not collapse, could exist as vast caverns. The temperatures would be extreme near the core, yes, but in the upper mantle, in certain zones, conditions could theoretically support life, especially if that life adapted over millions of years, or if technology provided environmental control. There is also the energy question. Geothermal energy increases with depth. If you could harness it, if you understood how to convert heat directly to usable power, you would have unlimited energy. An underground civilization would never run out, would never need to surface for resources, could be completely self-sufficient, growing food, using artificial light powered by geothermal energy, recycling water in closed systems, creating a biosphere independent of the surface world. And consciousness operates differently underground. We discussed this earlier. The electromagnetic environment, the isolation from solar radiation, the acoustic properties of vast enclosed spaces. All of these factors could enhance human consciousness, could make psychic abilities normal rather than rare. An underground civilization might be far more telepathic than surface humans, might perceive reality in ways we consider impossible. This would explain why contact is so difficult. Not because they are physically hidden, but because they exist on a different perceptual frequency. You could walk past an entrance and not see it, not because it is invisible, but because your consciousness is not tuned to perceive it. The inner Earth hypothesis does not require a hollow planet. It requires vast interconnected chambers, ecosystems that developed separately, possibly seeded by advanced beings who understood Earth would undergo surface catastrophes, who prepared refuge zones deep within, protected from whatever happens above, preserved across geological timescales. And if you wanted to hide an advanced civilization, if you wanted to ensure its survival across any surface catastrophe, where would you put it? Deep as possible, in spaces that surface civilizations cannot reach, cannot detect, cannot threaten. We have barely scratched the surface of our own planet. The deepest mine goes down less than 4 kilometers. The deepest drill hole, the Kola super-deep borehole in Russia, reached 12 kilometers before stopping. The Earth's crust alone is 30 to 50 kilometers thick. The mantle extends nearly 3,000 kilometers. We have explored essentially nothing of our planet's interior. We make assumptions based on seismic data and modeling, but we do not know, cannot know, what exists in spaces we have never reached. What if reaching those spaces is not about drilling? What if it is about finding the access points that already exist? The natural formations or ancient tunnels that go down farther than we expect? What if the way in is not through technology but through consciousness? Through knowing where to look, how to look, and being ready for what you find when you finally see it? The underground empire might not be spread across the crust. It might go deeper, much deeper, into realms we call inner Earth, because we have no other name for spaces that should not exist but do. Spaces where life continues, where civilizations thrive, where the old knowledge is preserved, and where, perhaps, they wait for surface humanity to finally remember, to finally be ready, to finally come home to the depths from which we originally came. So what does all of this mean for you, for us, for humanity standing at this particular moment in history? Because this is not just an academic exercise. This is not just fascinating speculation about ancient mysteries. If any of what we have explored is true, if an advanced civilization exists beneath our feet, if our history is cyclical rather than linear, if we are approaching another reset point, then the implications are profound, personal, immediate. First, it means we are not alone. Even on our own planet, we share space with others, perhaps descendants of previous cycles, perhaps beings who chose long ago to develop separately, perhaps humans who are so far advanced beyond us that we would not recognize them as the same species. This changes everything about how we see ourselves. We are not the pinnacle of evolution, not the masters of Earth. We are one civilization among potentially several, surface dwellers largely ignorant of what exists in the depths. Second, it means history is a lie. Not entirely, but the narrative we are taught, the idea that civilization is 6,000 years old, that humans were primitive hunter-gatherers before Sumer and Egypt, that progress has been steady and linear, all of that collapses. We are amnesiacs, survivors of previous catastrophes who forgot our own past, who forgot that we were once far more advanced, who forgot that knowledge exists, preserved in stone and in underground chambers, waiting for us to remember. Third, it means technology is being suppressed, deliberately. Free energy, consciousness enhancement, healing frequencies, anti-gravity, all of it exists. All of it has been rediscovered multiple times, and each time it is seized, classified, buried. Why? Because it would redistribute power, would make individuals independent, would break the control systems that govern surface civilization. Those in power, whether surface governments or deeper authorities, have decided we are not ready, or that they benefit from keeping us limited. Fourth, it means we have a choice. We can continue as we are, remaining ignorant, trusting authorities who have shown repeatedly they will lie to maintain control, accepting the official narrative, living on the surface of reality in every sense. Or we can start questioning, investigating, demanding access to suppressed information, exploring places we are told are forbidden, pushing boundaries, seeking truth even when truth is uncomfortable or dangerous. This is not a call to storm restricted areas. That accomplishes nothing except getting arrested. This is a call to change how you think, to recognize that the world is far stranger, far more complex, far more mysterious than you were taught, to understand that mainstream narratives serve specific interests, and that real knowledge exists outside approved channels, in ancient texts, in suppressed research, in the testimonies of witnesses who risked everything to speak truth. It also means we need to prepare, not out of fear, out of wisdom. If cyclical catastrophe is real, if we are approaching another reset point, then survival depends on knowledge, on community, on developing resilience that goes beyond stockpiling supplies, mental preparation, spiritual grounding, understanding that whatever happens on the surface, consciousness continues, and that the greatest preparation is internal, developing awareness, expanding perception, becoming the kind of human who could survive not just physically but psychologically through massive change. And perhaps most importantly, it means we need to remember who we are. Not these limited, distracted, fragmented versions of humanity that modern culture creates, but our full potential, the capabilities that ancient traditions describe, that mystics across cultures have demonstrated, that might be normal in underground civilizations but seem miraculous on the surface. We are capable of far more than we have been told, more than we believe, and remembering that, activating that, might be the key to everything. Because here is the final implication. If an underground empire exists, if they have been watching surface humanity for thousands of years, what are they waiting for? Why not make contact? Why not reveal themselves? Perhaps because they are waiting for us to reach a certain level, not technological, conscious. Waiting for enough humans to wake up, to remember, to develop beyond the limitations of current surface culture, waiting for us to be ready, to be worthy, to demonstrate that we would not destroy ourselves and the planet with knowledge we are not mature enough to handle. Every person who questions the narrative helps. Every person who explores suppressed history contributes. Every person who develops their own consciousness, who refuses to be limited by materialist dogma, who understands that reality is far more mysterious than science currently admits, moves humanity closer to readiness, closer to remembering, closer to reunion with the knowledge and capabilities we have forgotten. You are not powerless. You are not insignificant. Your awareness matters. Your questions matter. Your refusal to accept comfortable lies matters. Because awakening happens one person at a time, and when enough people wake up, when enough people remember, then perhaps the doors open. The access points become visible, and we are invited back into the depths, back into the full story of who we are and where we came from. The underground empire is not separate from us. It is part of our story, part of our family, part of what humanity can become when we choose wisdom over ignorance, integration over fragmentation, truth over comfortable deception. They are waiting, not to conquer, not to control, but to welcome us home when we are finally ready. The question is, are you ready? Are you willing to look beneath the surface, not just of the earth, but of reality itself, of history, of yourself? Because that is where the real discovery happens, and that is what changes everything. We have traveled deep tonight, through underground cities that should not exist, across global networks connecting ancient civilizations, into suppressed discoveries that governments classified the moment they were found. We have explored the possibility that beings called Anunnaki established underground domains thousands of years ago. That cyclical catastrophe drives humanity below the surface repeatedly. That technology exists which would free us from scarcity and control. That consciousness itself can be enhanced through specific underground environments, and that perhaps, right now, beneath our feet, an advanced empire continues, watching, waiting, preserving knowledge across ages while surface civilizations rise and fall. Not all of this is proven. Some of it is speculation built on fragments of evidence, on suppressed testimonies, on patterns that repeat too consistently to ignore. But enough is documented, enough is verifiable, that dismissing it all as fantasy requires willful blindness. The underground cities exist, the acoustic chambers exist, the sealed sites exist, the classification orders exist, the witnesses exist. Something is being hidden, something vast, something that challenges every assumption we hold about human history and human potential. The truth is probably stranger than anything we have imagined tonight. Reality usually is, but the direction is clear. Humanity is not what we have been told. Our past is deeper, our capabilities greater, our story more mysterious. And beneath the surface world, in the literal and metaphorical depths, answers wait for those brave enough to seek them. This is Mr. H, and if tonight's journey into the underground has opened your mind to possibilities you had not considered, if you found yourself questioning the official narratives, if you want to continue exploring the mysteries they do not teach in history class, then I hope you will subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, because we are just beginning. There are more secrets to uncover, more suppressed discoveries to examine, more ancient knowledge to rediscover. And I will be here, researching, investigating, bringing you information that exists just outside the boundaries of approved thought. Share this with someone who is ready to question, someone who senses that the world is stranger than we admit, someone who wants truth more than comfort. Because these conversations matter. These investigations matter. Every person who wakes up to the fuller reality helps shift humanity toward remembering who we are. The underground empire, if it exists, is not the enemy. It is a mirror, showing us what we could become if we chose wisdom over ignorance, integration over fragmentation, long-term survival over short-term exploitation. They went deep. We can too. Not physically, necessarily, but in understanding, in consciousness, in commitment to truth regardless of where it leads. Sleep well tonight, knowing the earth beneath you is far more mysterious than you were taught, that civilizations might thrive in depths we cannot reach, that human history stretches back farther than recorded time, and that you, by questioning, by seeking, by refusing to accept comfortable lies, are part of humanity's awakening, part of the journey back to wholeness, back to remembering, back perhaps to reunion with those who never forgot. The surface is not the whole story. It never was. And now you know. Sweet dreams. And when you wake, look at the ground beneath your feet differently, because something extraordinary might be waiting there, just beneath the surface, closer than you ever imagined. Until next time, this is Mr. H. Keep questioning, keep exploring. The journey continues.